Folks, this is Boris Johnson bringing you your latest edition of Ask Boris on LBC. You've got me in the chair for the next 45 minutes taking your calls, but of course I've got, as ever, my trusty companion helpmeet, Mr. Nick Ferrari. So the numbers for you to get your questions on the air are 0345 6060 973 or email boris@lbc.co.uk. And don't forget, you can also watch us live in high definition on the website. Let's go first, straight away. Let's go to Stuart in Peterborough. Stuart.
Good morning, Mr. Johnson.
How are you, sir?
I'm fine. Do you think the security services have enough powers?
The security services?
Yeah, MI5.
Is this in the light of this bill that's coming in today, the Investigatory Powers Bill? Is that why you're saying this, Stuart?
Are you talking about the Snoopers Charter?
Well, yeah, I think they should be given more power.
Right.
To do their job.
Well, go on. Give us a clue about what extra powers you'd like to award the security services, Stuart.
Well, they should be able to sort of like check up on people's emails and that, for not sort of being really sneaky and all that.
Yeah.
Just sort of.
They shouldn't be able to go on trawling expeditions.
Trawling for keywords.
All right. Okay, well, a lot of this is going to be put into context today by, of course, as I say, the Investigatory Powers Bill. Where do you stand with this proposed legislation, Mr. Johnson?
I've become really fairly kind of tough on this, Nick, in the sense that if you run a great city like this, which is the object of all sorts of threats, we have all sorts of people preparing terrible things against London and Londoners, you've got to have a way of checking up on them. And everybody knows now that a lot of police work is actually brought to a successful conclusion. Murder cases are solved nowadays much more than they used to be, thanks to the ability to use electronic data to check where people have been on their mobile phones. All that kind of thing really does work. So I've slightly moved my position since I've been mayor to thinking you've got to give the security services, give the police the ability to check this up. However, there's got to be a limit, and you can't have police officers, relatively junior police officers, randomly trawling through people's emails to see what they might come up with. That's obviously no good. You've got to have judicial oversight for this stuff, and I'm sure that is something.
The legislation today from Theresa May will require internet companies to store details of every website visited by their customers for the past 12 months, so they'll be able to know exactly where you've been looking, Mr. Mayor. Is that right? Which
is, as I understand it, a stronger provision than they have in the United States and in some other parts of the world. And
are you comfortable with that?
Look, I think that it is defensible if and only if it's supervised by a judge. What you can't have is police officers just using the ability to trawl people's websites as basically as an instrument of oppression and a way of bullying and a way of extracting information in a trawling way. I don't approve of that.
Okay, but the way you're hearing it so far, what we're going to hear today...
I think that there's a balance that's got to be struck, and when it comes to the Snoopers Charter, the powers of the police, I want to see judicial oversight. And, the same goes also, you remember we had that huge conversation a year or so ago about phone records of journalists and all that kind of thing. Judicial oversight is very important.
All right, we move on to other...
James in Heathrow.
Morning.
Morning, sir.
My question is, as Mayor Johnson has had a change of attitude as to us Luddites, although there are still problems with cover notes for taxi drivers renewing licences and things, could we also have a change of attitude to the amount of roadworks that are in London, even if it's just for the month of December, as it's London's busiest month?
James, listen,
all this business disappearing to the outskirts.
James, listen, I completely understand where you're coming from. I know where you're coming from. You're coming from Heathrow. That's where you are. You're probably waiting for a fare from the airport or whatever. And I totally understand your irritation about the roadworks at the moment. I'm sure, and I knew that this was going to be the number one issue on Nick's agenda when I came. I was cycling. I thought, what's he going to get me on? It's going to be roadworks. And the fact is, we're going now through a very, very intense economic recovery. We've got construction going on across London. We've got, as everybody knows, the cycle superhighways coming in, and they will be finished. The agony on them will be abating, James, in the next couple of months. By the early months of next year, it should be substantially better in central London. We've just got to get it done as fast as possible. There is another phenomenon which I'm sure you're aware of, James, which is the huge expansion in the number of private hire vehicles in London, which is something we are trying to get the government to focus on. You've seen the number of private hire vehicles.
What have you done to try and get them to focus?
Well, we've had extensive meetings with senior ministers.
Well, you've written a letter, haven't you? And you've been told that it would need a actual change. It would need an act of Parliament.
It does need an act of Parliament. Because
it's never going to happen, then, is it, Mr.
No, I don't think that's right. We had some very constructive meetings the other day with officials and ministers who, and I think they were, because they're instinctively very much kind of, all technology is great. You mustn't stand in the way of the punter and all that. And I totally understand that. But when you've got the number of PHVs, of private hire vehicles, many of them Uber vehicles.
What's the ratio of cars that is PHVs?
There are now about 89,000 or something.
Yeah, but what ratio is that? It's one in every 10, isn't it?
It used to be, and I can give you there used to be 2 years ago, the figures for the number of PHVs coming into the congestion charge zone used to be 1 in 100. It's now 1 in 10.
1 in 10.
So it's massively
So we've
increased.
got to take action quickly.
So it's I absolutely agree with you. It's something that the government needs to focus on. And at the moment, there is a mindset where they think, Uber, oh my God, wonderful Californian tech giants. Oh, we love Californian tech type giants. We mustn't do anything to interfere with their business. We love all this stuff. And there's a slight confusion, intellectual confusion between the desire to encourage tech of all kinds and the impact on traffic in London. And so I want to see some progress there, and I hope we will.
Where is the provision? Once this cycle superhighway comes in, particularly I'm thinking of areas such as the Embankment and Lower Thames Street, or wherever, Upper Thames Street, whichever it might be, where we will just have one lane each way. Where is the provision if a truck breaks down?
Well, we've done exhaustive modelling of what happens on those roads, and we are confident that they will be resilient.
Whatever if a truck breaks down, that you can do as much modelling as you like. You can't help a scaffolding truck breaks down.
You have equivalent problems already, and we get round them. And
No. It used to be 2 lanes going east-west, 2 lanes going west-east. You've decided to have 1 lane east-west, 1 lane west-east. A scaffold or a coach breaks down.
Listen,
what happens?
You're talking to. Is it beyond the wit of man to move a truck? Are you saying
how is he going to get there?
Are you saying that it's impossible?
How is he going to get there?
Listen, we're confident from the modelling that we've done.
Well, explain to me how. I'm intrigued.
Well, produce the map of the cycle superhighway, and I'm very happy to take you through it with
a coach
Leon
breaks down outside the Savoy. What are you going to do?
Well, you're going to shunt it off into the siding.
How? Tell me how you're going to shunt it off.
Well, you get to break down.
How? So you'll have to drive against the traffic to get, because you can't come the same way, because there's only one carriageway.
Look, I really think this is the kind of defeatism. If we'd had this attitude at D-Day, I mean, honestly, we can't get it. I mean, this is a country. This is a speed. We've put a man on the moon, and you say we can't get a truck.
We didn't put a man on the moon.
Well,
but yes.
Okay. We split the atom.
If you had NASA designing your cycle superhighway,
we managed to organise the most successful Olympic and Paralympic Games that ever taken place in this city, with all the transport that was entailed. And
with
you're
the
now
embankment working flat out with a special ZIL lane that you and could drive up and down in all day long.
It worked very well.
We couldn't have another ZIL lane, could we?
And now you're telling me that it's beyond the wit of man, beyond the powers of transport.
A map is on its way.
Beyond all our capabilities to move.
It's going to be a shambles. It's going to be an utter shambles.
I never heard such gloom and negativity.
We want to hang around with me more often. We move on to other calls.
Why can't you be more positive?
Because it's a shambles.
It's not going to be a shambles.
I don't know whether they've got negatives of you with a zoo animal or something that you've been allowed to get ahead with. Someone should have told you no. It is ridiculous.
No. It's going to be a wonderful thing for the city, and every so often cities have to do things that people instinctively think is not going to work, and they do.
Right.
And this will be something that will improve the quality of life of people in London.
It doesn't work on radio, but I'll just hand you an illustration. Well, if that car is broken down, you are absolutely screwed.
Nonsense. I just think that's not outside the Savoy anyway.
No, it's
basic geography here. Look, this this is something that we can sort out, and I really think
the truth is you should have done it with a network of roads up in the city, but they wouldn't let you.
The defeatism.
The truth is the only road you could get at was the Transport for London road, which was this one.
The negativity, and I can tell you, there was a plan. Just before you go totally off the planet, there was a plan. I'll have you know, which I had to to close the embankment altogether and turn it into a beach. So catch yourself lucky, mate.
I changed my mind. I reversed my opinion. You're a genius, and you're a champion of the motorists.
We're quite relative, yeah. I mean, just think what we expect. Can we go to?
We move on.
Can we go to Chantel in Ivor, please?
Hello, Mr. Johnson. How are you?
Very well. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. I'm a huge fan of yours.
Oh,
So much character.
Can I move you to your question, Chantel?
Delighted to hear it, Chantel.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What is your
My
question?
is,
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, I wanted to know what you are doing personally, if you're doing anything for the Syrians, and if you don't think that Britain is doing too much.
Yeah.
What are the other countries in the world doing? What are the Arab countries doing? Same religion, same language.
Yeah.
When is Britain going to toughen up? It's all very well to help all the migrants and refugees or economic migrants, whatever you want to call them. But isn't it at the detriment of the British person? When underground and four looked around, there's no seats and there's no British nationals. Hardly any anyway.
No British nationals where, Chantal?
Hardly any on the underground.
Oh, on the underground. Yeah. Well, hang on, I don't know about that. But let me just...
This relates to your article, of course, in the Daily Telegraph this week, where you accused Benedict Cumberbatch, I think, of talking rubbish.
Well,
of being of
in a very humble way. I said he might be. Listen, I want to get onto Chantel's point.
Well, no, you said he was talking rubbish, and you wish you'd been in the audience when he gives one of his nightly perorations, because you'd have shouted rubbish.
Well, perhaps.
I think that's fairly confrontational in my book.
Well, okay. But before I confront Benedict Cumberbatch, I must just answer Chantel's point. And look, Chantal, you're absolutely right that there is a huge crisis in Syria, which is not necessarily going to go away anytime soon. And the question is, how does Western Europe deal with it, and how do we make sure that we don't encourage colossal flows of migration that would be very difficult for us to absorb in Western Europe, but also, I think, bad for Syria itself, because you'd be denuding that area of some of the most talented people. So I think what the Prime Minister has said is absolutely right, which is to focus on helping the most vulnerable in the camps, helping take some of those most vulnerable from the camps, but doing everything we can to keep them near their place of origin, which is fundamentally, most people want to stay in the country they came from, the place where they grew up. And it would be a tragedy if Syria were to be, as I say, denuded in that way. Now, on the military front, there is no doubt that the position has become hopelessly confused, because you've got a crazy situation now in which the Russians are effectively bombing from the air the groups that, as I understand it, are being supported by the Americans, or being given supplies by the Americans. And no one could say that the strategy of the non-Syrian powers has been very well thought through. My own view is that it is very difficult now to find a credible Syrian opposition to Assad to support. And I secondly think that ISIL, ISIS, Daesh, whatever we call them, and I frankly I prefer we call them Daesh, because you shouldn't. It's a victory for them every time you use the word Islamic in their name. I think that the priority has got to be to drive them out of the areas of Syria that they have conquered and have got influence in. And that's not just Raqqa, that's all the sites in the... I care particularly, obviously, about the appalling damage that's being done to the future of Syria in the destruction of the ancient monuments there. Quick response from Chantal to what you've just heard, Chantal?
Yes, and just... Well, yes, but what is the rest? Why? I feel we should have a vote. We should have a vote, the people in Britain, the nationals, not the immigrants, to say... Should we be doing more, or should we be doing more for the people in this country? What about doing more for the people in this country? Look, obviously we've got to do everything we can for the people in this country, but I think the priority has also got to be, for Syria, has got to be to try to stop the slaughter that ISIS is, that Daesh is responsible for, and to keep people from
emigrating from Syria, and that means trying to get a solution as rapidly as possible. But Chantal, if you were to say to me, does the West currently have a coherent and credible strategy for dealing with Daesh, ISIL? The answer, I'm afraid, is no.
Where do you stand on the vote for military action?
Well, I think I think I'm very much with the government's position at the moment. They need to come up with a coherent and credible explanation of what they are trying to achieve. It may be, frankly, that we should get rid of Assad. He's a tyrant, he's a monster, he barrel bombs his own people. But you've also got a bunch
who do we put in his place?
Well, that is a very good question. And the experience of the West in getting rid of Ba'athist strongmen is not a good one. And you saw what happened in Iraq. And I think many people are starting to wonder whether, frankly, the fate of Syria might have been better over the last few years if Assad had been able to retain his grip on power. And you look at what is happening in many parts of Syria because of what Daesh is doing. That is the tragic conclusion. That is not in any way.
So you haven't said what happens. We get rid of that. We get rid of Assad, and we put in.
Well, that is.
Well, hang on. You just said we get rid of. You can't just say, well,
Well, I don't have an answer to that. I don't have an answer to that.
So you want somebody gone, but you don't know who takes... Dear God, this is Iraq all over again.
Exactly. And we just seen the death of Ahmad Chalabi. You remember Ahmad Chalabi died yesterday. And you remember him. He was the guy who told us all we got to get rid of Saddam and put me in charge, Ahmad Chalabi, and everything will be all right because, he was a Shia. And everybody believed him. Everybody in Washington thought it'd be absolutely fantastic. And it was a disaster, a total disaster. So, I wish I had a glib and easy answer for this. I think that you've got two appalling combatants in this fight, equally ugly in their own special ways. You've got Islamic militant fanatics who butcher people in the most horrific ways and are attracting supporters from around the world in a completely chilling way. And then you've got Assad, who is a tyrant, the exponent of a police state who murders his own people. And it's very difficult to choose between them.
We move on to other calls. Where are we going now, Mr.
We're going to John in Hackney. John.
Yeah, hi Boris. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing, John?
I'm okay, sir. My question is, should Turkey join the EU?
Well, I think that Turkey should join the EU, yes. And this is something that I'm conscious people find absolutely, shocking and appalling. But let's face it, it's something that has been pledged by the EU since 1963, I think, possibly earlier. It's something that's been a long-term ambition of the EU. And they should have an ultimate vocation to join the European Union. The benefits for Britain are that you would be anchoring in Europe an absolutely pivotal country that is
the borders of Europe would then stretch to Syria.
Of huge importance in
so the European borders would stretch to Syria.
I am not proposing, John and Nick, that this should happen overnight. And I think
no matter. You're not going to change the geography, are you? Unless you're going to redefine countries' borders now, are you?
No.
So now you've just taken Europe to Syria.
I have not just taken Europe.
Yeah, by the way, Turkey on board.
Don't forget there was a time.
And now,
I haven't just.
Unfortunately,
it's not something. Powerful though I am. Powerful though I am from the cockpit of Europe in
every Turk can come to this country.
Yeah, well, is that such a terrible thing? My great grandfather was a Turk.
Well, I rest my case.
And just to clarify, I think the only circumstances in which Turkey could join Europe now is if we got back control of our borders, and that's the key thing. I want to stress this. I think Turkey should be part of the single market. There should be free trade. There should be free movement of capital. There should be rights of companies to establish. But when it comes to freedom of movement of the kind we currently have with the rest of the EU, that is plainly not going to work with Turkey. And indeed, John, I don't think it's currently working with the rest of the EU. And this is the crucial point, because you've got last year, I think we had, or this year, we had a surplus 330,000 immigrants or more, 330,000 balance of migration into this country, which was hundreds of thousands more than were officially predicted or indeed promised. And that is entirely because of the open border system. And my own view is we can't endlessly continue with that arrangement. You cannot tell the
but it's the main principle. It's one of the main.
That's a load of baloney. That's a load of baloney. That's a load of absolute baloney.
You think Germany would yield on that?
Well, it's not up to them. It's up to the British people.
No, would give that concession is what I'm saying. So what you're saying is, without that concession, without the ability to control our borders, we have to leave Europe.
I think that we need some kind of control back to this country.
And without that, we need to. It's a Brexit.
Well, I think that it's perfectly possible for countries to be given derogations on accession to the EU. You've had countries like Spain and Portugal, other countries have been given long periods when they haven't been in part of the free movement zone, and of course the East European countries had that too, and it was Tony Blair who decided that.
But let's move to 2050. Sorry, whenever the vote is. Without that control, it's a Brexit.
I certainly think that it's something we need, and we should be. I do not see how we can claim to the British people that we can manage migration without having that fundamental. They have it in America. They have it in Australia. Why is it so absolutely critical to our future within the EU? It's not true. Now, I have to tell you, there are plenty of businesses, plenty of agricultural businesses and all the rest of it who thrive on total free movement. But the difficulty really is for social services, for people who have to look after arrivals in this city in coping with the influx. I walk around London the whole time. I cycle around. I talk to people who've pitched up here from across Eastern Europe who don't have anywhere to live. We're having to look after them. It's a real strain on all our outreach organisations, on social services, and I really think it's time to think about this. And
so having Turkey join would help.
Well, as I say, having Turkey join on that basis would not, I think, be impossible. And
see if John agrees. John, do you want Turkey to join the EU?
I don't think we have much time to go into that, Nick. I have a secondary question.
No, I'm not allowed a secondary question because so many people...
But what is John... I'd love to know what John...
No, I've overruled.
May I finish, Boris? May I finish? The secondary question, which implies to your remit, is what impact would it have on London? And then after you're gone, what impact would it have on Zach's London?
Well, we're assuming that Zach Goldsmith is successful.
Look, I mean, let's be clear. I don't think Turkey is going to join soon, and I think it should join on the basis of restrictions on free movement of people. That's my position. I think Turkey should have a European vocation. I think it's good for Turkey and good for the world. I don't think that is doable if you have free movement of people.
What did George Osborne achieve last night with his speech to the equivalent of the CBI in Germany, would you say?
Well, I think that he laid out some very clear markers about the way...
He didn't touch on anything you've just spoken.
The way we are going to have a two-speed
how could
Europe,
he ignore
insofar as the Eurozone's operations go? Now, obviously, what you can't have is the treaty at the moment says that the European Union has a currency called the euro, right? Well, it doesn't actually. It has a currency called the euro, and it has the Danish kroner, and it has the Hungarian forint, and it has the Polish zloty, and it has all sorts of things. And the treaty is talking total twaddle.
Yes, as regards border control, Mr. Osborne didn't even touch on it.
Well, yeah, it was a long speech, and he probably didn't have a chance to bring everything up.
Even you don't believe that.
He was talking. Actually, to be fair, he's the Chancellor, and he was talking about the arrangements between the Eurozone and the non-Euro zone countries in the EU, and he's making a very good point.
So, are you going to lead the No campaign?
You should not have a.
Are you going to lead the No campaign?
I'm going to see what the outcome of the negotiations.
Would you be prepared to lead the No campaign?
I think it'd be absolutely fatal for any campaign if it were to be led by me, frankly. But I'm going to.
Are you not a leader then?
I think there are plenty of people.
Are you not a leader?
I'm very happy to be a supporter.
So you don't see yourself as a leader?
Listen, Nick, if you want to chop logic with me all morning, I am very happy.
You said heaven help any campaign that has you as a leader, so you don't see yourself as a leader?
I think actually the best thing for the campaign for both staying in and for getting out of the EU would be if it were not dominated by political voices, but you had serious business people on either side lining up to make their points of view. And ordinary people, I think, people hear an awful lot from people like me. I will see what happens with the negotiations, and I am obviously a massive supporter of what the Prime Minister is trying to do. Right. But as I've said to you before, I think that the penalties for getting out of the EU now are lower than they've been for a very long time. There is an attractive alternative future. We should be thinking about it. In an ideal world, I would want to stay in a reformed EU. But let's get that reform. Right. And actually, there was in George's speech last night, there was some very good and challenging stuff to the Germans about the need to crack down on regulation from Brussels and give parliaments back more powers and stop the Eurozone dominating what goes on in the EU. It was an excellent speech.
We move to another call, Mr. Mayor.
Southgate.
Oh, hello, Boris and Nick. My question is the number of officers now which have been either made redundant or, they're very low officers which patrol the streets. Would you agree, right? Now, I want a yes or no question, right? That with the commissioners who are basically taking the government to court, right? Would you agree with them? Would you not agree with them? And one thing I would say, before you start, one thing I'd say is that I can see the way policing is going now, it will be privatised. And the reason why I say that is because I see so many private firms now who look like police officers going around very rich areas and patrolling rich areas, and also remembering that you brought in the actual water cannon.
The water cannon, yes.
I can see your team.
Okay, your signal's breaking up. Genuinely,
okay,
I will.
Paul, listen, I just want to go. I think what Paul is really asking, though, before we come to that, is he's asking about the changes to the funding formula that the government wants to bring in. And I think that it is right to be alarmed by that. I think that it would be very disadvantageous, not just for London, but for Lancashire, Sussex, various other areas who have been done down according to some inexplicable changes in the way the thing is calculated that are very, very hard to understand. Simply take no account, in London's case, of the massive growth of the population that we're seeing. Crime is continuing to fall. We've got some great figures on what we're doing with burglary, for instance. Knife crime continues to come down. But come on, this is a huge city with loads of social problems of one kind or another. Still got 4 of the 6 poorest boroughs anywhere in the UK, and people want to see police out on their streets. And at the moment, I have to say, I don't think the funding formula is correctly framed, and we are in conversations with the government about that.
How receptive are they to
well,
these?
I mean, what I think you can't. Everybody accepts that in the public services we have to make economies. Let me tell you that what the Met have done just in the last 3 or 4 years is they've cut the police budget from an annual 3.6 billion to 3.1 billion. We've sold about 120 buildings, including Scotland Yard. We've had a huge delayering of the senior ranks, got rid of lots of perks like cars and houses and all that sort of thing. We've made massive cuts, but we've kept police numbers, go to Paul's point, we've kept police numbers high because I believe that what Londoners want is to have a safer neighbourhood team in every ward of every borough.
How can they confine all this money
to keep crime coming down?
To watch Julian Assange? How can we confine? It was 10 million for Julian Assange, and they can find 7,000 officers for the Notting Hill Carnival. How come if we're so racked?
One of the things it's a very good question. One of the things that we do get is a capital city grant, which is to compensate for the extra cost of events like that. And the Assange business is a classic example of the kind of unforeseen extra cost that falls on policing in London, and frankly should not come to the detriment of policing on the beat in this city. And so that's the discussion that we're having at the moment, and I think government does get that.
Now, what is the situation with the Commissioner at the moment? His contract has been renewed, has been extended.
It's just not something that I think is, confessional though this boudoir
it's not something what?
It's not. I think the contractual arrangements of people
I'm not asking
in
for
the
his pay.
GLA.
I'm just asking, is he still in position?
Well, of course
you were quoted.
Sir Bernard is, of course, still in.
So you have extended his. When does the contract come up?
as everybody knows, he has every commissioner has a 4-year term, so his period in office will exceed mine, and he will be there after I've gone. But really, I think there's not a lot more that I can.
But it was reported. It was reported that he will be given a 3-year extension.
Well,
is that true?
I am not going to comment on the contractual arrangements. Oh, you wouldn't expect me to do so. Why should I? I wouldn't talk about. In the fullness and richness of time.
Why are you so touchy about this? Would you like to see it extended? Would you support if the Home Secretary was to ring you and say, you're on such cordial terms, it's likely to happen, and say, where do you stand, Boris, on extending Sir Bernard's contract? You would say yay or nay?
Listen, I think it would be, it's just not fair on people.
You don't have an opinion?
It's not fair on people who talk about their contracts and their futures.
Why are you no longer supporting him?
Who said that?
I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it.
Well, I'm not going to get into. I'm a total supporter and admirer of what Bernard Hogan Howe has done in getting crime down.
More calls.
He's doing a terrific job. Well, give me another call.
Because we have to go for news. Coming up after the news, the latest landmark that's losing a fortune. That's after the news here on LBC.
More negativity
with Lisa
from
Aziz.
Ferrari.
The latest London landmark to be losing a fortune, Mr. Mayor, is the Orbit. It opened up in April last year.
You mean the Arsenal Orbit?
Yes, the Arsenal Orbit. In the 12 months to the end of March this year, it's lost £520,000. That's neatly £10,000 a week. The projection was it would make £1.2 million. It's losing over £500,000. It was expected to attract 350,000 visitors a year. Last year, 123,000 went to see it. Will you accept that it's a shambles and a failure?
124,000, according to this note that I've just turned up, and actually it's had since it reopened last year, it's had 200,000 people. It's a wonderful thing, and
it's losing more than 500,000.
It continues. When people go to the park, it is one of the things that they love to do. We're seeing more and more people go.
But they aren't going to the park. Almost 3 times the number were predicted to go than are actually going.
Yeah. The park, it's only just reopened. The whole thing is taking off. The whole development there is going to be absolutely astonishing.
Miss it? Well, you sell it for scrap.
You could do. I think that'd be a crying shame. It's the largest piece of public sculpture anywhere in this country. Yeah, it's a superb. And by the way, I think maybe you don't know this. It is going to be embellished. It is going to be further beautified with with Carsten Hollers, the famous Danish artist, and Anish Kapoor have collaborated on a project to add the longest covered slide from the ArcelorMittal, from the platform. It is going to go a gigantic looping kind of fallopian thingamy. It's going to go all the way down.
Like you get on Blackpool Pleasure Beach or something like that.
Far better than that, and far. It's
when's that going to open?
It will open shortly. It will open by the spring, or it's soonish.
You have no idea.
I can't give you the exact date, but it's coming down the track, and this is just one of the ways. Seriously,
when is the night? When will the night tube be in operation?
Because tomorrow is a very important point. Tomorrow we are launching explaining to the public what's happening with the whole Olympicopolis vision. You saw that stuff in the papers today about the Victoria and Albert Museum turning down the Lady Thatcher's Baron's clothes or whatever. Victoria and Albert Museum is coming to that site. They're going to build a huge new museum. Sadler's Wells, the dance studio, is coming there. You've got the UCL, the university, is building a £270 million new campus there. The Orbit is part of an amazing constellation of attractions.
Should the V&A have taken Baroness Thatcher's?
Well, I think that they should, actually. And I think that the site in East London would be perfect for them. I think, irrespective of their stylistic merits, which people may quibble about, I think people would want to go and see them.
And while we're talking deadlines, the nighttime tube was to have been introduced 2 months ago. Where are we with that on the deadline? When can you tell me? Because Christmas is coming. It would be handy for that, wouldn't it?
It would, Nick. But I've got to tell you, this is something that the City of London has done without for 150 years. What I won't do is
achieve it in your mayoralty.
What I won't do is pay.
You won't achieve it in your mayoralty.
Well, what I won't do is pay unreasonable price for it, in which Londoners would feel in their fares. There's a very good deal on the table. I just hope that
but it's not going to be
members
of
the tube unions will get a chance to look at it. No one will work more hours than they do today. Drivers have the same number of weekends.
No, you're just reading from a press release now. Why don't you answer my question, which is it won't be done by the time you leave office next May?
I want you to know that this is something that I think we should have. But I'm not, and I hope my attitude is clear from this. It's not something
that will be achieved
I regard.
By the time you're in office.
That's your prophecy, but it's not something that I regard as, absolutely critical. If people don't want to do it, if they don't want the £500 bonus for all staff on light tube runs,
all right,
they don't want the
reading from the press
release.
They
don't want
we move on
the
to
£500 bonus for the successful completion
Boris.
of the modernisation of all the stations. And that is,
I wish I could reach that piece of paper.
Frankly, you can read that for me.
No, reach across and steal it. Right, let's move on. We have a call.
We go to Frank in Hertfordshire. Frank,
hi, Boris.
How are you, sir?
Hiya. Why the CRB licence is taking so long to renew? Sorry, I'm a London licence.
I know you are. I know. I'm very. Listen.
I've been waiting. I've been waiting for my.
I apologise for this.
Just to explain to listeners, we covered this earlier this morning, Mr. Mayor. You are, I think, one of 30,000 people being prevented from doing your jobs. The Met Police are taking months instead of weeks to complete background checks to allow people like you to go out and drive your cars and cabs, Mr. Mayor.
I really, really do. Frank, I really do apologise to you because I think this is absolutely disgraceful, and the Met have hired a large number of people to try and push this thing through, to try and accelerate this.
How long have you been waiting, Frank?
But the other thing I've asked, Frank, is people should be.
When I applied for my license, I took all my paperwork in and officially had it stamped and sent, and I paid for this service on the 1st of August.
Oh, for God's sake.
Now you say that the Metropolitan Police have employed all these more people. When you try and phone these people up, instantly the phone doesn't even ring. It goes straight to a recorded message saying
Frank, could I ask you,
unavailable.
What have you had since the 1st of August? What kind of response have you had?
I've just had one. I actually made a phone call myself 6 weeks after the application to say that the application was moving along, so to speak, was being processed.
Well, look, I think it's totally ridiculous. I'm sorry. Frankly, what I've said about the instructions I've given to TfL is that when people are being held up and they already have a licence to operate a black cab in London, then quite frankly, TfL, the Public Carriage Office, should just issue them a temporary licence and get on with it. You should be on the streets able to do your job.
Why don't they? Presumably, you could bring that in this afternoon.
Presumably, you've already got a licence, Frank, have you?
It's expired.
Yes, what the mayor is saying is they should give you like a provisional, because you've already passed once, and then you still need to be checked, but at least that would allow you to work. Well, you're the mayor. Why don't you just tell your colleagues, just bang a desk and say, I want it done by 3 o'clock this afternoon?
Well, I have asked them to do that.
Well, you're the mayor.
I will find out, and they
remind you, they work for you, Mr. Mayor.
They assured me that it would be done. I will now.
So they told you they would have done this, did they?
I am furious about this. I will find out what they have done about this, because I think it is just unacceptable, and I frankly cannot understand what they are playing at. So Frank, I apologise to you. We are trying to speed this up, and I will make sure that your particular case is dealt with today, and I hope that through LBC we can get your number, and we will make sure you get your license as you know before the week is out. Frank,
Frank, stay on the line. We'll get to your number across to the mayor's office.
Can we go to Ricky in Hounslow?
Hello, Boris. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Thanks for the opportunity. Boris, I've got a slight problem. I've got some migrants in my street, but these are not from Syria. They're from Uber.
Yeah, right.
Minicab drivers, kipping in the street.
Yeah, where are you in Hounslow? Yes, I know. I'm aware of this. This is and what's going on, Ricky, is absolutely, and this is a part of the problem. And I showed
they're urinating and defecating in bushes and
what, in your front garden?
In the front garden, there's a green area very close to where I live. They're tossing bottles of urine that they've obviously filled up in the back of their cabins. My God,
they are systematically. I've said this to ministers, and I produced pictures, actually, Ricky, from Hounslow of not of urination and defecation, you'll be pleased to know, but of cars parked up higgledy-piggledy all over the place in station forecourts, illegally parked, going down one-way streets the wrong way. It's happening across that area now because they're basically breaking the law. They're trying to pick up passengers from Heathrow. They're loitering in the area, and at the moment, I have to say, the government is still so absolutely besotted with this idea that they've got to support Californian tech titans, even though they don't pay a dime of tax in this country, that they are, in my view, not yet doing enough about it. And this says
you must have powers, though, to stop this. You just tell Sir Bernard to have some cops walking around and nick these people the minute
we
they're
are.
caught
No, we are, and I can.
Well, have you noticed increased police patrols, Ricky?
Bloody Uber drivers on.
Ricky, have you noticed increased police? Ricky, stop talking when I'm interrupting. Have you noticed increased police officers in the area?
No.
Right.
Well, there is a great deal of activity being done by.
Well, there is. I've just spoken to a man who's
certainly
getting
by Hillingdon Council
pooping in his front garden.
I've seen the.
If this was happening in Islington, there'd be riots.
Well, it's something we take very seriously, and we are doing our best to deal with the problem. What we need is we need quantity licensing for minicabs.
Well, no, you need police wandering around nicking these people who are piddling people's front gardens.
Well, we also
if this was
have
Notting
doubled.
Hill,
We have more than doubled the private hire vehicle the private hire vehicle enforcement operations, and. This is
You'd
not
probably
far
put
from
the same team that nicked all the Sun journalists if it was in Holland Park, wouldn't you? You would have dawn patrols. We have a quick word because we're coming to
what this shows, though, and the point that Ricky is making, he's making it well, is that we have too many Uber vehicles, too many PHV vehicles.
But when you
London
tell
now.
the government their obsession with tech, what do they say? Do they just smile at you?
Yeah, look, we are making progress on that, and actually we had a very good meeting.
Why are they so fixated on technology?
Well, because as I say, I think there's a confusion between their idea that Britain has got to be a great tech capital and being very receptive to companies like Uber that come in and basically predate on the London market and don't really pay much tax. And yes, it is perfectly true they create lots of jobs, and that's an important thing. And actually, customers like Uber, and you do not minimise that. There are huge numbers of users of Uber in this city. They are benefiting from a cheap and convenient service. So you've got to have there are two sides to this, and you've got to strike a balance. But at the moment, Uber is, and it's not just Uber, but the Uber app is being abused by some drivers in the way that Ricky describes.
All right, just
and
quickly,
we need to crack down on that.
I've got a minute only for two things. The DLR strike, Mr. Mayor. I need to get you on that. We're into the second day of a 48-hour strike.
Yeah, well, it's something that seems to be based on a ragbag of various minor issues that the RMT has decided to go on strike about, and I very much hope that they will. The DLR is run now by Amy rather than Serco, and I hope that they will get together and sort it out as fast as possible.
How much sympathy do you have for junior doctors?
I have on the DLR.
No, junior doctors. How much sympathy do you have for junior doctors in their row with the health secretary?
Look, I have every sympathy with the health secretary in trying to sort out the problem, but it's obviously not something that's within.
Is 11%
within my
the
direct
pay rise that he claims?
Not something. I'm afraid you have to forgive me, Nick. It's not something that's within my direct competence as mayor.
Lastly,
I will say that Jeremy, I think has been doing a fantastic job on health. And
not have you got a strike.
I think he's done a fantastic job.
What you call a potential strike from doctors?
I hope he can sort it out as soon as possible.
And lastly, why has Lambeth fallen out of love with your garden bridge?
Lambeth has not fallen out of love with the garden bridge, and I was delighted. Lambeth gave it planning permission. Don't forget, and Lib Peck's done a great job. Look, I think they had some concerns about the way it was being funded. That has been sorted out. And I think one of the things that perhaps was a factor in their considerations was it became clear what we could do if they really didn't want the garden bridge to make landfall in Lambeth. We could turn it into a garden pier. So it would go all
is
the
that
way
what's
out.
happening?
So it would go all the way out from Westminster and stop 5 yards short of Lambeth, and then we could all go and wave at Lambeth until they decided they actually wanted to join it up.
Does the bridge make landfall or not?
It will, of course, it will.
Oh, I rather like that idea. Tremendous.
I think that concentrated minds a bit, and it will be. Look, let's see where we get to. But I think
have we started building it?
Libtech has done a great job there, and
has it started yet?
And we'll see where we will.
Has it started yet?
It hasn't started, but it needs to start fairly soon because the Thames Tideway Tunnel is coming in shortly thereafter.
Right.
So there's a timetable we've got to get.
All right. There's a timetable we have to get to as well. Thank you
so much.
Thank you. Appearing Ask Boris here on LBC.
I don't understand why it is that you hate homosexuality so much, so vehemently, or is it that you're scared of it? What are you scared of?
I think, Graham, the important thing is that people need choice in life, and some people just get to the point where they